I think the hardest thing I do is to use an old expression I learned is to trust the process. When you see something coming along and it looks like just so much fluff and stuff, doesn't seem to be any really um, meaning behind it. As somebody said once that being an artist is letting go of outcomes and just letting yourself go. Don't don't worry about where it's going to go. I know perhaps a little bit, uh, being now heading close to 70. I've been at this quite a long time, and when I was young, I never painted much like this. It was always sort of my apprenticeship was just the other guys, Rembrandt, and there was a man by the name of Tipolo. They called him, I believe, Giambattista Tipolo. He was a master, and he certainly did not paint like this. And then there was Antonio Canal, who was known as Canaletto, one of my very, 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 very favorites. He did etchings of Italy, if I remember correctly. And Antonio Canal certainly was on a different wavelength. There have been many like Antonio Canal and Tipolo and Rembrandt. Michelangelo has always been a favorite, and I once tried to copy one of his, the pronunciation may be wrong, Sibyls or Sibyls, that are on the Sistine Chapel, that are on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And once I did it, I realized that there was only one Rembrandt. There are one Michelangelo. His work is his alone. There's no sense in trying to be somebody that you're not. And I studied a lot of haikus. There are men by the name of Basho and Isa and Busan and Shigi. And I think it was in the poetry of Japan and the haiku artists that I really started to find my music. They were my music. They spoke to me of life through nature. And Isa did a poem, a haiku, I can paraphrase. He said, "Don't worry, little spider. I will not harm you. I keep house gently or I keep house lightly. And that always spoke to me. I love all life. And Isa expressed it very well. He had a great respect for the sacredness of all life, even the tiniest little insect. They were marvelous people. And there were ladies too. I believe one was Shiki Ree, and she talked about her son who had passed from this earth, and she called him her little dragonfly hunter. And if I'm mistaken about that name, please forgive me, because it was one of my very, very favorites, and I know that a lady had written it about her son, the little dragonfly hunter. So when you the American artists I love the most would be Franz Klein, who worked much in black and white. He was part of the New York Abstract School, and part of a group that I believe met at the Cedar Bar in New York City. And there were a number of them in this group. I believe perhaps that de Kooning was part of this group. Pousette Dart and others. The history of art is fascinating because it was Sister Corita Kent who said, "There is no success or failure, no mistake. There is only make." And that's the best equivalent of her saying that it says so much. There was Frida Kahlo, who was married to Diego Rivera, and Frida had a very, very tragic accident, and she was in awful pain, and she said, "As long as I can continue painting in life, I will go on." Diego was a socialist, and he painted murals. And expressed his view of life through that. So there's always, every artist had his own view of why he painted, what his rationale was. Long ago, Rembrandt, who painted in oils and did etchings, which he had good times, he had bad times. To look at his art, he had a religious background, it would seem, based on his art. He did many scenes in the Bible, in etchings, and they are my very, very favorites. And I have many, many, many very favorites.